Before we get to the interview, everybody, I just want to let you know I'm Dave Bondy, independent journalist. Please help support my independent journalism and click the link down below to join my Substack or my locals community. It's only $5 a month. You can quit at any time. I left the mainstream media in order to keep it real. Good to see you. Now, I think I met you like I do many people on social media. And I know, you've been commenting on things and so forth. And since I've been away from TV news, I've done several shows on mental health because that's not something that the media, they maybe do a story and then they forget it, but drug addiction or fentanyl or anything like that, but they don't focus on time. When I worked in TV news, the boss would tell me, you have a minute to tell a story. You can't tell a story in a minute. I mean, so I brought up wanted to have you on, and I think you offered it up to talk about some pretty tough things. Why are you here?
Yeah, Dave. I mean, I think you touched on it. I feel like when the media, not just the media, but your friends and your family and society in general, I mean, they tend to stray away from discussing the real tough topics especially when it pertains to addiction. Addiction is something that I think many people have at least someone that they know that's impacted by it. A lot of it ties directly to mental health issues. I think mental health issues is a large issue within this country. And, maybe I can share some of my experiences. And I guess my hope is that, if I can tell my story to some extent, that it may help others who may be looking for, some hope to come out of similar situations to what I went through.
Yeah. And for everyone who's out there, you may go to your job or you go to a store and you may think I had an issue with mental illness when I was at the TV station. I've never said this, but I was having panic attacks on the air. The stress was bad. And at that time, you think you're alone. You think you're the only one going through this. Is that like it with an addiction or drug issues? Do you feel like you're in a bubble really? And it's just your own demons are after you?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I would even take it a step further, and I would say, what does alone really mean? Alone may be that you don't have anyone supporting you, right? Your family may have given up on you. Your friends may have given up on you. But also, to take it a step further, I think a lot of people, and maybe this is where I hope to help, may have given up on themselves.
So what did you're in your mid 30s, what happened? Where did it go? I don't want to say down the hill, but what happened in your situation? Everyone's different. And I discovered things about when my brother passed away, how it started for him, and we didn't even know a lot of it. But what is your story? How did it start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can give at least a brief detail about it.
Yeah.
So when I was 17, I was in competitive athletic sports. I was in varsity wrestling for Milton High School, and I experienced an injury. And my injury was treated with a prescription of Vicodin, the off-brand of Vicodin. And that was really the start as far as the abuse of substances. As I've come to learn, it actually was more of just a coincidence that was the substance, but the root cause actually came from, trauma from growing up. But in general, it started with the prescription medications. Over the years throughout high school, it advanced to more severe prescription medications, all in the opiates category. And then through my early 20s, it progressed to street substances like heroin.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you're here right now. You are very happy to have you here. There's a lot of people who don't make it every day. I remember sitting in the newsroom hearing every day at least 3 to 4 ODs. The coroner would be sent out to pick up people. I mean, you're lucky to be alive.
Yeah. No, I've overdosed one time, where I ended up in the hospital from it. So I've definitely had my fair share, not just that time, but other times I've had my fair share of close calls, of course. But I think, I'm very fortunate to be here. I know that during the time that I experienced my addiction at its peak was not like it is today. I think in the news you will also see that fentanyl is quite a more severe or extreme substance people are more likely to die from.
Yeah, and let me interrupt you real quick because I know a little bit about from when my brother with fentanyl. Are they? Is that where there are they? Do you know on the street right now? Not that you're, are they mixing drugs with fentanyl?
I have no idea.
Okay,
I
that's good that you
haven't
don't know.
I haven't used addiction opiates,
Oh,
any sort of opiates in over 15 years.
wow,
Um,
wow,
but but what I can say is when I was using substances, that often the substances we would buy were definitely mixed with other substances. So um, usually, for example, like, and this is a long time ago again, but usually like cocaine, maybe mixed with methamphetamine.
yeah.
There
But you
you,
didn't
you
know
never
it.
know, right? You're
Yeah, you
not
didn't
buying
know.
a prescription pill from a pharmacy. You're buying something from some guy that is on the street.
Yeah, and you didn't know. You didn't know what was in there.
Exactly, yeah, and I assume when I hear it reported on the news that they're mixing fentanyl with everything, I can totally I can totally believe it and relate to it.
Um, I'm reading the comments online right now, and I want her to clarify. Someone said they have no sympathy for them. I don't know if they mean for you, but the situation is there are many people out there in these situations that they don't talk about it. Families don't even know. I mean, your family probably they knew. I assume you couldn't hide this. I'm probably.
Oh no, they start to reject you as soon as you get into the really bad phases. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I have a comment towards the comment that was made. And I get that. I also understand. I think the biggest debate is that it's a choice, right? Everyone says it's a choice. You choose to do it, and you have to accept the consequences of your choices. And I'm actually a really firm believer of you have to accept the consequences of your choices.
Yeah.
But what I guess I would share with the person that made that comment is that you you do have the choice to stop, but when you're under the influence of an addiction, or when you're severely influenced by a substance, the choice becomes much more difficult because it's not a choice of what you believe in your mind. There's also physical consequences to stopping,
Yeah.
and so a lot of people fear that.
And we talked about that before the show, and I don't know if that's what you mean, but I stopped doing, Coke and Pepsi, and the withdrawal symptoms were just crazy. Is that what physically, mentally trying to stop? It's a battle because, right? I mean, physically, mentally.
Yeah, I mean, even for example, if you look at studies, stopping alcohol with just no medical intervention at all is actually life threatening in certain circumstances. And the reason that people don't just instantly do it is either they don't have the access to the medical support they need to be able to do it, or they try to do it, but the mental effects on, or the physical effects on them are so great that they can't stand to, you know, follow through with the cessation of it.
The, I'm talking to you right now, so and I guess I'll fast forward. Well, how bad was it for you? I mean, like literally, I said people. I know of people who have died, and you're lucky to be here because you probably could have easily died. What was your word? What was the rock bottom? Because someone says you need to let someone hit rock bottom. Well, rock bottom is different for everybody, and some people it's death. What was your worst moment, or like where? What? When did it hit you that like you were at the bottom?
Sure, yeah, I mean, absolutely, yeah. I'm grateful to the Midland community, at least when I experienced my bottom. I was at the peak of my addiction. It's with many people, it's jail. It's either jail or death, right? And in jail, if you do something wrong and you end up with some, significant consequences, there's a period where you just don't have access to the drugs anymore. And if you go through that period, you can actually regain your rational self and tell yourself, hey, wow, what was I doing? But when you're on the substances, and I wouldn't expect most people to relate to this, but when you're on the substances, your mind is thinking in a completely different realm than what it is when your mind is clear from substances.
Yeah.
So you have that moment of clarity after you have been able to separate from the substance.
So what was it for you that, I don't know, say woke you up, but changed who you were? How'd that happen?
Jail. I mean,
It
just
was jail.
Yeah, just jail. Yeah, jail is not the place that I would recommend anybody go. It's very unpleasant. I mean, I probably don't have to sell the consequences of jail to everybody, but it really is an unpleasant experience, especially for some people that, like for me, for example, when I was in high school, I was the nerdy kid, I wasn't the hard, tough fighter street kid, I was the soft, nerdy kid, so when I went to jail and I was around all these people that were more confrontational, I mean, it was intimidating to me, and I didn't want to ever go back to that.
You say jail, and then I remember, and I'm transparent, so I don't care. And my brother went to state prison, and after he got out, he got back on it. So that wasn't his rock bottom. His rock bottom, I guess, was death, which is sad. But he was clean for 2 years. But then he had done the damage to his body because cocaine, I didn't know it messes with your heart.
Mm-hmm.
But for you though, jail, that was your bottom where you realize I don't want to go back here.
Yeah, maybe that's something important I also wanted to touch on, because jail's just an opportunity for you to get a clear mind, right?
Yeah.
And then when you get a clear mind, I think the next obstacle that people commonly face is the stigma of having been in that situation. So for example, when I got out of jail, I was fortunate. My family owned a local construction company.
Okay.
So when I got out, I had a job. I didn't like it, but I had a job at least. And at one point, someone reached out to me from a previous job that I'd been fired from, actually. And he said, hey, we kind of need your help. You used to work here, you know everything, and we want you to help. So I actually got hired back into a job that I had been previously fired from, which was an engineering related job. And like I mentioned, I was kind of nerdy in school, so I got into the engineering field. Yeah. But what I do realize from working construction is that oftentimes when people get out of jail or when they are just starting to overcome their addiction, they face a lot of like self roadblocks, like I can't do this because I can't, succeed because I'm this or whatever. And I think that if you have people supporting you, I think it makes a really significant difference.
At times, government makes it difficult. Obviously, if someone's convicted of sex abuse against a child, I don't want them ever working with children. But there are people who do recover and deserve a chance. And like you said, you were in a good situation with your family and so forth, but there's others, and it's getting better, but others that they have a hard time getting back in society, especially if they have a criminal record, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, most jobs will decline you for having any sort of record at all. Fortunately for me, I had some people to connect me to other people who could get me into some positions, but in general, there's a period. There are some new laws in the state of Michigan for removing charges from your criminal record. I'm a full supporter of that, because right now, today, I'm not using substances. I have a family and I take care of them very well.
Yeah.
And I have a good job. I mean, I'm a productive member of society, and I don't feel like I should be punished any further.
How are, because I know a lot of people who have different addictions, gambling, so forth. How have you gotten to where you are? How can you do that? Did you get help, or was it all within you? Did you do it? How do you do it? Because do you have temptation still?
Well, actually, so for the first part was I did get help from a peer group.
Okay.
I did do a 12-step program.
Okay.
That helped me at least. I think, and this will tie into what I think is the long term way that I overcame it anyway, which is you want to surround yourself with positive people.
Mm.
People who tell you you're worth it, you can do this, you can overcome this, you can do this, you're worth everything that you do, and we appreciate you. If you surround yourself with that environment for a year or two, it actually changes your mentality. And for me, that's really the root cause. Is if you perceive yourself as in a negative view, for example, I'm not worth it, I can't ever get that job, I can't, I'll never be worth anything, then that's what you will be. But if you're around people and they tell you you're worth it and you can do this and there's nothing you can't do, and then at that point you start to get into a position where you have more of a positive mentality than a negative mentality. And when you reach that, then yeah, you can achieve what you want.
Is there enough? Well, I know the answer. There's not enough help out there. I mean, a lot of people argue we're giving so much money to Ukraine. The state of Michigan blows billions of dollars on pet projects, that there's not enough help out there.
Mhm.
It is That's what I hear from people, from teenagers to older. It's just the especially Michigan. It's just not set up to help people who really need it.
Yeah, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of political beliefs, but I,
Yeah.
I don't really trust the. I mean, I don't think the government has really supported in any way in that aspect. What for my personal story, I would say it was more the community and the
Okay.
people in the community that supported my recovery, rather than government programs. Because if I had to rely on government funding for recovery programs, I don't think I would have fared as well.
Yeah, because it's the people. I just did a story recently about people helping people. The government is not going to care as much about you as real people who love you, or real good people. What advice do you have for, maybe others are watching this right now? Let's start with someone. If you could talk to yourself back in the day, if someone's watching this right now struggling with this, they want to get help but they just feel like they're trapped, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple paths. For example, if you're religious, go to church. In a church environment, you're surrounded by people who support you and who are positive influences on your life. They won't ever support you in any sort of negative behaviors. They'll only reinforce your positive behaviors. If you're not into the church scene, there are recovery programs, and it doesn't have to be what you would consider to be the stereotypical recovery programs. I mean, there's 12-step programs. For me, that worked initially. But for others that, and I talk to this with my primary care physician often. For some people, those programs don't work. They need something more like a community recovery program where they just provide a positive environment only. They don't they don't have any sort of requirements, or like 12-step rules, or there's no like readings at the beginning of the meetings or anything like that usually scare people off. There's a wide variety of options, but the biggest thing I would say is to surround yourself with positive people.
Yeah, and what if you are the family? Because we never gave up on my brother. We had a lot of tough times, and there were times, we did the whole let's leave him in jail. I remember my mom and dad arguing. My mom wanted to get him out. My dad said leave him in. What advice for family would you have for the not even just family but loved ones? If you have someone like yourself, what would you suggest for people? Because what was good for you? It's just having the loved ones, but how do you like how did you want to be handled? Because I think it's kind of intimidating, or some people are scared as to how to approach someone who needs help.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say from my experience, typically people who are immersed in their addiction are usually defensive. So any sort of criticism that you come to them with, it may not be well received. That doesn't mean you should give up, but maybe take a different communication approach. I'm a firm believer of, I even have people to this day that struggle with substance abuse in my life. And, from the experiences I went through, I've learned to just kind of accept them, and just be supportive anyway. Because, like I said, the emphasis on being surrounded by people with a positive attitude, I think is really crucial. So if someone comes to me and they're suffering, I don't come at them with negativity. I only come at them with a positive perspective. So reinforcement of good behaviors. It's kind of like how you would raise a child, really. If they exhibit good behaviors, you reinforce the good behaviors. If they come at you with bad behaviors, you don't really, go out of your way to acknowledge the bad behaviors, but you give them a choice to choose a positive behavior instead. I mean, it's the same thing as like conscious parenting, if you will.
I think you just being here and proving that every day is a battle, but you've made it through. You did it. People can do it. I mean, even at your depths of despair, there is hope, and you right here on this screen shows that it can be done.
Yeah, I've lived 17 years past my active addiction, and today I actually, I have a, quite a happy life, to be honest, Dave.
Well,
And so, one thing, I guess, I did have a sponsor in a 12-step program, and one of the things he told me stuck with me forever, which was anyone that encourages your old behaviors, you should treat like they're trying to kill you.
huh.
Because so many people actually do go back because someone teases them into, like, oh, hey, come hang out with me and let's do this or whatever. And then you go with them because you're a people pleaser or whatever. And those are the people you see that die from the overdoses because they have quit for some period. They go back and they do the same amount they did before, and it's too much and they overdose.
So even if that person is a family member, a best friend, if they are toxic for you, you're saying you need to remove them.
Stay away. Yep. I was always taught people, places, and things. So if for example, if your thing is drinking and you used to drink at a specific restaurant or something, don't go to that restaurant anymore. If you used to use with a certain person every day, then don't hang out with that person anymore. Things like, even like being around vapes or things like that. I mean, just anything. It just noticing what your triggers are and then being able to avoid those triggers, I think is probably the best thing you can do.
Well, I appreciate it. Any closing words? I think you just being here is inspiration for people that it can be done, and some advice as well. And I just praise you for actually, not many people would be willing to come out here and say this.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, especially with my situation, just have empathy. In my situation right now, I would look at someone and that I see that has a problem. I'm not a person to judge. I can't judge them because I've done that, or whatever, something similar anyway.
Yeah.
And so try to have empathy, because I think that there's a misconception that a lot of these people that choose to do it, and they do choose to do it. I have no disagreement with the fact that they choose to use drugs and alcohol. But if they're in the middle of a deep addiction, the choice is not so simple, I think. And if people can understand that, they can support people better. And I think we can really help more people recover than not.
Couple comments. They say, thank you for sharing. You should be proud of yourself. Yeah, so I appreciate you being here, and I know we'll be in touch. So if you ever need anything, let me know.
Of course, Dave. Thank you so much for having me on.